It gives me great pleasure to welcome our distinguished guest speaker, Ronald J. Daniels, president of the Johns Hopkins University and father of Allie Daniels, class of 2012. Ronald J. Daniels became the 14th president of the Johns Hopkins University in March 2009. A law and economics scholar, he holds an appointment as professor in the Department of Political Science at Johns Hopkins. Prior to his appointment, he served as provost of the University of Pennsylvania and dean and James M. Torrey Professor of Law at the University of Toronto Faculty of Law. President Daniels' own research focuses on the intersection of law, economics, development, and public policy. President Daniels currently sits on the boards of the East Baltimore Development Corporation, the Baltimore Community Foundation, the Goldsecker Foundation, the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, the Governor's International Advisory Council, and the Asia Pacific Rim University's World Institute. He is serving as a member of the Association of American Universities and Association of Leading Russian Universities Steering Committee to help guide collaborations between member universities. He is also engaged in the Center for Health Policy and Healthcare Transformation at Johns Hopkins. President Daniels earned a Master of Laws degree from Yale University in 1988 and a JD in 1986 from the University of Toronto, where he served as co-editor-in-chief of the Law Review and earned several academic honors. He received a BA from the University of Toronto in 1982 with high distinction as a political science and economics major. He has been visiting professor and Coca-Cola World Fellow at Yale Law School and the John M. Olin Visiting Fellow at Cornell Law School. In 2009, he was elected a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. President Daniels and his wife, Joanne Rosen, a human rights lawyer, live with their family here in Baltimore. We are delighted that President Daniels could join us on this special occasion. Please join me in welcoming President Ronald J. Daniels.
Good morning, and thank you for that very warm introduction. When Headmistress Maureen Welsh called me several months ago to invite me to speak at this year's commencement ceremony, I was flattered and quickly accepted the invitation, subject to one minor proviso. Your classmate and my daughter, Allie Daniels, would have to agree that this would not cause her any undue distress or embarrassment. I assumed that Allie would not object. After all, what could be better than having your father speak at your high school? Allie, however, didn't quite see it that way. Eventually, she assented and she made one modest request, that I not make mention of her in my speeches. This seemed only fair, and I promptly agreed. I promised not to acknowledge my relationship to Allie. It is, of course, obvious that I wear multiple hats here today. Proud father, indebted parent, figuratively, not literally, to this institution, university educator, and president of an institution that has a long, rich, and magnificent history with this great school. And let me focus on the latter first. As you may know, Johns Hopkins University and the Bryn Mawr School were founded about the same time. Both institutions transformed the educational systems of which they were part. In the case of Johns Hopkins, the landscape of American higher education was redrawn by the model of the research university it pioneered. In the case of the Bryn Mawr School, its status as the first American college preparatory for women set a standard and an aspiration for other schools to follow. In this manner, Bryn Mawr contributed powerfully to the steady march of equality for women in American society. Both institutions benefited from the involvement of many of the same founders or founding families. Among these individuals was one Mary Elizabeth Garrett, whose philanthropy endowed both this school and the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Indeed, the depth of Miss Garrett's vision and her grit was underscored by her insistence that she would only endow a school of medicine at Hopkins if the university's trustees agreed to the unfathomable, and that is that they would admit women as well as men into the program. A radical notion at the time. Now, in truth, it took some time, and the university's trustees tried every possible way to avoid taking the gift with that one string attached. But ultimately, they relented, and the co-ed School of Medicine at Johns Hopkins was born. There's another tie that links our two institutions, namely the early role that Hopkins faculty played in examining and then certifying that the students of Bryn Mawr had achieved proficiency in courses necessary for college entry. In fact, it is my understanding that in the distant past, the results of students' final examinations that were administered by the Hopkins faculty were communicated by telegraph message that was hand-delivered to the homes of Bryn Mawr students, in some cases just prior to the commencement ceremony. And, as you might have predicted, given Bryn Mawr's high and unrelenting standards, there was more than one would-be graduate who learned at the very last moment, perhaps when she was already in her white dress, that she had failed to make grades and would not be participating in the ceremony. Thankfully, this is a practice that Ms. Walsh assures me has been long abandoned. You can rest assured. This glorious shared history is not the only reason I'm proud to participate as the Hopkins president. Another reflects my appreciation as a university leader for all that you, the class of 2012, have accomplished during your years at Bryn Mawr. How well prepared you are for what you will encounter in college. Even in the relatively short time we have been part of this community, we have witnessed your spirit of intellectual curiosity, self-discipline, compassion for others, and self-confidence that are the hallmarks of this institution. We have watched you surmount one academic challenge after another, muster the confidence, poise, and self-reflection necessary to deliver your convocation addresses, and participate fully in your annual gym drill ceremonies that link your class to the school's grand past and its magnificent future. And for that, on behalf of all the parents and families who are here today, we want to thank the leaders, the teachers, and the staff for the support and guidance that you have all provided to our daughters, granddaughters, and sisters. Thank you. But there's more that I want to say as a university leader, and it's here that my various roles that I have today gets a bit complicated. As a university leader, I want to encourage you, the class of 2012, to use the many gifts that have been bequeathed to you by Bryn Mawr and by your families to chart a path to happiness and fulfillment that is truly your own. Not your parents' path, not your friends, your own. A path that is marked by imagination, courage, and independence of thought and deed. A path composed of individual steps taken, individual choices made, and individual risks assumed. A path that from today's vantage point may seem random at times, contradictory, self-indulgent, and perhaps even bizarre. But a path that will be true to who you are, to your passions, to your beliefs, your interests, and to the impact you can have on the world. You are, in truth, now at a jumping-off point. After years of imagining what it would be like to be a senior, a year of many lasts, and preparing for the world beyond Bryn Mawr, you are finally here. The last 18 years were a joint venture between you, your families, and the school. The next chapter will increasingly be yours. You will define yourself. You will make some difficult choices. Your parents will agree with some of these choices, but they may not agree with all of them. You will realize that independence cannot be given, it must be taken. And in this vein, parents, perhaps we ought to unfriend our daughters before they do it to us. It's coming soon. And so, while having regard to long-term destinations, don't be slavishly bound to them. Open yourself up to experiences, ideas, opportunities that seem intriguing, tantalizing, and rewarding, even though you don't know exactly where they're going to take you. So if that internship in Africa or in inner city America makes your pulse race, grab it. Or if that mandatory freshman English class sweeps you off your feet and calculus seems like drudgery in comparison, then maybe a life in engineering isn't for you. Take that next advanced poetry seminar and find out for sure. In my own case, I can well remember testing my parents' patience as I insisted on a more, shall I say, leisurely path from my undergraduate studies to public policy internships, to door-to-door insulation sales, to law school, to then a position in a law firm, then back to graduate school, and then finally to the academic world. This was not the straight line, not the route my parents had in mind, one which would have taken me from the womb to the legal profession in 3 simple steps. And I can't say that I knew how, or even if these waypoints would end up coalescing into a coherent and meaningful path, one that has been such an immense source of happiness and satisfaction. But now, with hindsight, it all makes perfect sense. Every step that I took, even though random, even though chaotic at times, somehow came together. And I should say that in the end, my parents ended up being my greatest supporters. This is all easy for me to say, wearing my hat as university educator. But as a parent, I recognize this is entirely a different matter. The suggestion that we're going to have to hang back, to accept that our daughters are going to make choices different from the ones we want them to make, that they may not be on a clear path to destinations we have in mind for them, is, well, a little frightening, perhaps even repugnant. Can't we just try to structure their lives a little bit longer? In particular, can't we just revisit the whole idea of senior week and discuss why, contrary to our sage advice, it would be far better for our daughters to stay in Baltimore for another few weeks and enjoy our wonderful company? But alas, our daughters are in Bryn Mawr. They are self-possessed, they are responsible, they are unwavering. They will make the right decisions, and we will accommodate ourselves to them. And the best I can hope for is that Allie and all of you will at least heed our strict admonition to apply sunscreen with an SPF of 30. To the class of 2012, Godspeed. Make us all very, very proud.